it.
Awesome.
All right, let's do it.
Hey, Kale, I was riding my bike this morning, and I rode down the outer road in front of Waffle House, close to your house.
Yeah.
Have you seen how beautiful it is? The setting. Can you see, like, when you drive down Providence? So it's
Oh yeah, when
a
you
little
turn,
lower,
when you
but
turn, and the whole hillside's colorful. It's beautiful, beautiful fall.
have you driven on the outer road, like right when you go past getting to Stony Creek? The little
No, but
goes down
occasionally
the
I'll
hill?
take Rock Quarry, which is kind of the same.
Yeah, it was
phenomenal.
this morning at like 7 o'clock when I was on my bike, and just turned and looked, and it was like, it's one of those you're like, I'd love to be able to take a picture of that, like, but it won't do it justice.
Right.
Morning, so it was beautiful, and as I think about that as our topic today, getting into taking time, finding time. Our topic today on the Vetted Podcast. How's everybody doing?
Doing well.
Doing good.
Good. Great to get on, and great to be, as a Vetted Podcast, is a part of the Pro Partners team. The Pro Partners team that takes care of private practice owners, that has business systems, solutions, and things to help that veterinarian who was not trained to be a business owner be a very successful business owner. Success is not just profit and growth. Success is culture. Success is happiness. Success goes beyond the walls of the clinic. Success is feeling fulfillment in your life. The Maslow hierarchy, if you will, being able to get to a point where you're helping people, pets, and you are at a point where you see the rewards of what you're doing beyond the profit. So I that's my love about the Pro Partners team, our DVM Business Solutions, our DVM Financial Solutions, DVM Office, so from bookkeeping to sitting down and having white glove service, if you will. What's going on in the practice? How can we help make sure the services that go on behind the scenes are working really well? Kale, you put it in a really good way about what Pro Partners team does for veterinary practice.
Yeah, so we help people get in business, stay in or grow their business, and then one day transition out of business. And so I think we have a really great suite of products to help anyone in any of those areas, wherever that is.
Absolutely. Specifically for the private practice owner.
Yes, only for the private practice.
Yeah, only for the private practice owner. I think if we dive into some articles, some news that's out there, and this one's not real new news. This is from the spring, but this is that why your vet bill is so high. This is that one day that I was commenting on an article I hadn't read because I couldn't find it. And the reason I couldn't find it is because whoever had written the veterinary article about this article said it was in the Wall Street Journal. It's not in the Wall Street Journal. It's in the Atlantic. Get the quote right, damn it. So, anyways, we found it. And I think what this shows is how important the private practice owner is. I want to break that down. So the article says, the title, Why Your Vet Bill is So High. And the subtitle, Corporations and Private Equity Funds Have Been Rolling Up Smaller Chains and Previously Independent Practices. This is by Helene Olin. I might have murdered your name. It's how I read it. Sorry if I did. So, it's interesting, as we've seen in the past 10 years working with veterinarians in the business strategy side of things is the corporate consolidation. We've seen it slow down recently. Interest rates are up, and plus they found out that owning a practice, you still need a good culture, and a lot of the veterinarians are seeing not a great culture from the private equity people. And private equity people are understanding that private equity's main thing is stockholder return. They don't really want to call it profit for the practice because that's not what that's about. It's about the stockholder return, the people that own the private equity. Mm-hmm. And private equity is what they call dark money for a reason. They don't report to anybody. There's not an SEC oversight like Coca-Cola, right? It are these very wealthy firms, conglomeration of money that is about their money. It's not about, they'll try to come in and say, are about furthering you, your business, your community. But there's nothing further from the truth. Because there's no way you can be connected to community when you don't even live in that community. I think that's just, come on. Mm-hmm. Come on. How do you be connected to community if you don't live there?
Maybe you don't even live in that country.
You may not even live in the country.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely aren't going to the same restaurants and seeing the people in the community. You aren't seeing that person struggle coming in your door. You're not feeling that. You have a complete emotional block from that, which is private equity is what it is. There's no question about it. Not all consolidators are private equity. There's some good stuff happening out there.
There are some good ones. There are some good ones that are not not out to roll up to the next highest bidder.
That's right.
There are some that are out there to build a long-term business.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are definitely some out there that are like, we're building this to sell it,
Yeah.
make money.
Yeah. And what happens too is you'll have some veterinarians that went out and started a corporation, but they get to a certain point of complexity and probably burnout, and they're like, and someone brings them a big check, and it's kind of hard to go.
Why wouldn't you?
It's hard.
Yeah,
right?
like, and to be honest, in some instances, the money's so high, you'd be silly not to.
Yeah, it's like how would we tell a client
Yeah,
turn that down,
yeah,
right? Because we've been in that situation.
yeah, and this is no slight to anybody that has sold to a corporation or anything like that. It was probably the best option you had.
Yeah.
And so no slight to those people at all.
Right.
But when it comes back to why is the bill higher?
Why is the
then
bill higher?
It's because we have these economies of scale coming in and driving prices up. And
it's that emotional disconnect, right? It's I can raise the price on you
because
I don't know you. I don't see you. I don't have to deal with that.
Well, this article does a good job of showing that as the private equity entered the space, the industry basically to quote the article, it says industry cheerleaders pointed to surveys showing people would go into debt to keep their four-legged friends healthy, and so from an investor's perspective, low risk, high reward. The veterinary industry is known for returning higher than average profit.
Yeah, that's that OPM, other people's money. Mm-hmm. You're making money off other people's money, and those people aren't even using their money. They're using debt to help you with your profit on that side. So, yeah, it's the rise in costs has come from the fact that in corporations, you have to have standards of care for that corporation, meaning here's how we do things. You do an x-ray every time. You do an ear cytology every time. It takes the thing the doctor has is an innate ability, a gut feeling to be like, we don't need to do an x-ray on this animal today. But if the corporation says you do an x-ray and you didn't do one, you're going to get in trouble. Mm-hmm. And when your pay is dependent on doing X number of x-rays, we don't go down the production talk. The production talk isn't about the production talk itself. It's about how the production talk is done and the intent behind it. Mm-hmm. I think production pay can be a really good thing when the intent's right. I won't go down that. I'm not knocking production pay. Where we don't, as we say, with viewpoints, there's good and bad. Mm-hmm. We're bringing out the bad viewpoints today.
Yeah.
Of that private equity driving that price up. Other thing this article talks about, and I'll jump to it here. It talks about a study found serious medical errors occur more frequently. I'm going to start that over. Man, I'm getting through that one really good. A study found serious medical errors occur more frequently after private equity buys a hospital. I think, isn't that what a veterinarian, I mean, the whole thing's about medical care and getting into that. So, not to belabor the article, but if you continue to go through, and I would encourage our listeners to go out there and check this article out. We'll put the link up there on the website for this article. And, I mean, there's point after point in here, but we don't want to, dwell on the article for sure. If I get to, I think one of the last things was interesting, though, is we talking about finding time. We're going to talk about the COVID stimulus of money from government, and stimulus of animals and number of animals that increase. So it's kind of like how those things correlate. But this does point out that, shelter animals count. An animal advocacy group reports that the number of pets surrendered to shelters rose in the past 2 years. Mm-hmm. So there's a book out there called Rethinking Rescue. Haven't read it yet. But anyways, we went and emptied out the shelters, right? We talk about price increases, demand, supply and demand. We live in that economy in the United States. Mm-hmm. You demand something, I have a less supply, prices go up because who's going to pay the most for that service? And that's what drives that. Now we're sitting there, as you know, going into this cost thing, this increase. We just got done a week ago looking at the latest inflationary statistics and whatnot, and in the United States sitting at 2.4% now annualized. The veterinary space was still like in the sixes, but that is because from October of 23 to April of 24, it was still running high. But in the past 3-4 months, we've seen a 0.1, a negative 0.1, and a 0.1 in the pet care. That's including pet care, grooming, boarding, veterinary care. That's 0.1. You annualize that, that's 0.4. So you're seeing this, things come down, which leads us to our next article, which is like, how do you discuss this cost of care when you've got this negative talk out there, right?
Yeah. Can I go into financial responsibility for a second?
Oh, yeah.
This has been burning me all morning.
And I think that, actually, that comes right into here. If you talk about how to discuss the cost of care,
yeah,
it's about what you're talking about.
Yeah, and so like as we're reviewing these articles, there's all article time and time again that are folks that.
Did you like I stared you down when I took a drink?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I'm glad you got me off topic. So I was on a roll there. But in these articles, there's time and time again examples of people that people that are writing articles of how the cost of health or pet healthcare is so high.
Right.
They're using examples of people that put themselves in horrid financial situations for their pet. Like the dog is terminal, and so we know it's going to die within 6 months, but we're going to go ahead and do X, Y, and Z, $1,000, put it on a credit card.
Quantity versus quality.
Yeah,
of life.
and so whether it's not the vet's fault, it's not the veterinarian's fault, and then that person complains that vet care is so expensive. It's like, no, you put yourself in a. You love your animal. I get it.
Right.
I love my animals too, but I'm not going to put myself in a bad financial position to prolong something that isn't going to be long lasting anyway.
Right.
A 12 or 13-year-old dog that has something going on, you probably shouldn't spend $5 or $10,000 on it if you can't afford to just write a check for it.
Right.
And so it's all these articles frustrate me a little bit because it's not the veterinarian's fault that this is so high. It's someone choosing to either have more pets than they can afford, or do these services that are optional, and then going out and complaining that the cost of vet care is so high. You chose to do those services, and you're also asking for services that are in a human field would be $30,000, $40,000, $50,000,
right?
And you're asking for them at a hundredth of the price.
Yeah, tenth or hundredth.
Yeah, a tenth or a hundredth of the price.
Yeah.
And it's like, how is there that much of it? These should be expensive services that you're asking for. It's not my fault that they're expensive.
Yes. We live in a problem discussion society.
Right.
We discuss our problems. We don't discuss the solutions, because the solutions take work. They do take work, and it also takes the ability to say I was wrong. Right?
Yeah.
That's a huge thing to do. So, and when that burden's put on somebody who, the veterinarian, it's not their fault, but now it is a responsibility of the veterinarian to discuss the cost of care, to be realistic with you bring in that new animal, to educate them on what that could cost. And, you start there.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, too, is that we've looked at like root of problems. And the question is, I've always wondered, Lauren and I, our first 2 dogs are little miniature schnauzers, and pretty sure we got them at a place that was a puppy mill, and they weren't that expensive, like $250. This is like over 20 years ago. But those 2 dogs had more medical costs than I've seen, from epilepsy to congestive heart failure to kidney issues. The medicine spent, all those things, and I wouldn't turn it. Unfortunately, I was in a position to be able to afford to do that for those 2 pups. They had good quality of life. They didn't live as long a life as you expect. But then we got, hey, let's take our time and investigate where the breeder, right? Learn about them, the quality of the dog, and I think there's something to say with understanding that. Mm-hmm. Understanding that the gene pool you're getting is part of the issue too. There's puppy mills out there. There's things out there that should come from a regulatory standpoint. People talk regulation being bad. Like, that's a pretty good regulation, like not be inbreeding dogs. Mm-hmm. That's a bad thing. I have doodles. And every time a veterinarian goes, oh, ear issues. My doodles don't have ear issues. Mm-hmm. Lauren investigated the breeders. And the breeders aren't puppy mills. They've got to process what they were doing. And it costs more up front. The dogs do. They go on their annual exam, get their preventatives, get their vaccines, get their dentals. They're out. Mm-hmm. They go in maybe because they've eaten something stupid. Right? But all kidding aside, that's also education too. I think the veterinarian has to look at how do we advocate for a gene pool of animals that are healthy? Because that's the problem is the person that can't afford that $2,500 dog is going to go buy a $250 dog. It might turn into a $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 over a certain amount of time medical problem.
Yeah.
And so it's that cost of care has got to be communicated. So this was How to Discuss Cost of Care. This was in today's Veterinary Business News on October 1st by Amanda Donnelly. She's got a pretty good article in here about the problems. And it gets into some care credit and insurance, things like that. But I want to see more of an article about proactive. Let's talk about what you said. You're exactly right. Responsible pet ownership.
Yeah. If you can't afford an animal, don't buy one.
Or there's ways to afford it. You can go and get, you talked about it. Heck, you go to a rescue shelter, and a lot of those animals, those mutts, are some of the healthier animals.
Yeah. Two of my 3 dogs are shelter dogs.
Yeah.
And they're both, mixed breed dogs.
Yeah.
And they're both healthy as can be, dental, but all dogs have dental.
Yeah. That'll prolong its life.
And so yeah, it's you don't have to go buy a dog.
No. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, as they say. There's no question about that. Goes into education and all that. So some pretty good articles there to take a look at. We'll put those out there. We're going to dive into what we're talking about here. Coming off our last 2 episodes, we had about marketing, and we've had about hiring. And now you need to find the time. You have to make the time. You got to take the time to do those things, to make those things happen, especially as we're seeing, I think everyone's seeing a little slowdown. Mm-hmm. And that slowdown comes from it. People do not remember COVID unless you sit back and really think about it. During COVID, in 2020, they had stimulus going out, amounted to about, for a household of 4, somewhere around $3,000. 2021, it was $6,000, roughly. Rough numbers, not exact, but rough numbers. That came in extra. It was checks that you got. So people had the ability to do some things they haven't done before. And so people forgot about that and go, well, I'm not making as much in 2024 as I did in 2021 and 22. Well, yeah, the government sent you some money. And so you had money to do things. Now we're trying to, change that around and get back to some normalcy, but don't forget what happened back there. When that happened, that's also a big part of what flooded the veterinary space. Mm-hmm. There's no question about it. There's a huge correlation today to be like why things are slowing down, pets going back to the shelters because people can't afford the animals because they're not getting that government stimulus. And that was a bipartisan. I'm talking about bipartisan issues here that got spent. So I'm not being a partisan here. You know me, outside of here, I'll be partisan, talk about things. But this was a bipartisan. Both sides agreed upon this to put that injection into the economy, and that created those things.
Yeah.
And now we're on the flip side of it. Kale, talk about the things you've been seeing recently on time inside the practice and how to best use that time to drive business.
Yeah, so I mean, anybody that's experiencing slow times, it's a good time to invest your time back into the practice, whatever that looks like. And the number one thing that I've been telling people, and someone finally took my advice, which I don't know why they do, but anyway, they did. And so I was like, hey, if you're having slow times, get your whole staff to call these appointments and make sure they're coming in. Implement a process where every person coming in gets a phone call.
Right.
And they were having people miss appointments, things like that. And they said overnight, they started doing that. Overnight, it stopped. Mm-hmm. And so, that's one thing that you can do to make sure you're not having gaps in the schedule. But the other thing is to look at the schedule and say, I've got a slot coming open here that is not usually open. Mm-hmm. And so how can I fill that? Let me go to my lapsed client list. Let me call people until I fill it.
Right.
And so one of the other things that we talked about in that same meeting was incentivizing your staff financially somehow to have the schedule full.
Right.
So like if as a reception staff, if the schedule's full today to like whatever our definition of full is, everybody gets X or something. Mm-hmm. Because, a lot of times I think the receptionist is one of the most important roles in the hospital solely because they're the gatekeeper. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that control the schedule.
Yeah.
And so, we need to make sure that they're supported and they have the tools and the resources that they need to do their job well. Mm-hmm. And so, if you are experiencing a slow time right now, it's probably a good time to start being proactive. We haven't had to do that in a long time.
Right.
Because so many people were getting pets, whatever the economy had going on. And so I think it's one of those things. It's a new thing that we actually have to go out and make sure our schedule is full again.
Yeah.
Whereas they were just coming to us previously. So it's been 4 or 5 years probably since that's really been.
Yeah, no, it's 2020. Kicked off in 2020. We're in 2024, and 4 years later, and yeah, you expect to see this given the data, given what happened, and now it's that you got to get a mindset shift to go. This is where we're at today because if you don't change up and continue to do what was happening in the past, I mean, you're living in the past then.
Yeah.
You got to move forward and look at being real about what's happening tomorrow. So
if your schedule is slow, it's your responsibility to make sure it's not.
Right.
And if you a lot of times just get on the phone, took sales training, that was the only thing that they said is like if you're not picking up the phone, it's your fault.
Right.
Because that's the way you still sell things.
Yes.
And so it's a really good time to sit down with your staff and spend the time to say, here's how I want the people answering the phones. Here's how I want things scheduled, and really think about that.
Yeah.
Because we need to take a little responsibility and say, if my schedule's slow, I can't just accept that it's slow.
Right.
I need to fill it,
Right.
and I don't need to be the one to fill it. Like I need my team to fill it.
Yes.
And how do I incentivize them to do that?
Absolutely. And well, like I said, we're talking about take time or make time. You've got time there then.
Yeah.
Right? So in your schedule, not only looking at filling it for that, but you might look at it as a business owner and say, instead of filling that with clients, maybe I should take 4 or 8 hours of this week and build in business time.
Mm-hmm.
So I can think about marketing the practice, think about what's the goals for the future, think about those things, especially as we get to the end of the year, taking time to think about what's happened this year, what's changing, what's going on. So yeah, I think people, we have excuses why we don't have enough time. Mm-hmm. But if you actually sit down and look at it and think about it, you can find time. You can find clients inside your book of business that they need to show up. It happens, right? People get busy. They had an annual exam. Maybe you're forward booking. Mm-hmm. Maybe someone missed, right? Is your booking system going right? What are those things that happening? So don't take for granted that the person doesn't show up. It's probably most likely not because they went somewhere else. It's because they got busy. I missed my vaccine appointment on Saturday. I just got busy because I didn't get a reminder. They didn't text me.
Yeah. Well, and myself personally, like I'm not. Text mean nothing to me, really. Like if I did a good job and put it on my calendar, I'm going to remember it. Yeah. But if I don't have it on my calendar and you text me, I'm going to.
It was on the weekend too. Saturday on the weekend, I'm not looking at my calendar.
Yeah. So a phone call is still
huge. Text message, phone call. Phone call's the best.
You
got to call.
You got
to pick up and
have
call.
To call.
But then you got to remind them about the appointment too.
Yeah, I'm not saying you shouldn't have all these appointment reminders,
right,
and things like that. But everybody has an app now, and everybody has all these things, which are great. I personally hate them. I'm not going to use them.
I know you do.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I want you to. I'm just a phone call.
Yeah.
That's what it. I got the first feedback. I've been saying that for several months now to most of my appointments. I had my first feedback this week, and they said we started doing it, and it was an immediate response.
Yeah. Positive response. Absolutely. They'll take your call. Especially they'll take the veterinary's call. It's this doctor's office.
Yeah. Hey, I need to talk to you about your pet. Okay, great. They need to talk to me about my pet.
We talk about how much they care about, how much the owner cares about their pet, what they'll spend on it. You call, they're going to answer. It was funny watching that Hassan Minhaj Netflix special. He talked about the pets. He was like, yeah, in the United States, it's like you ignore all these phone calls, but if someone calls about your pet, that's what he literally is like.
Yeah.
He goes, I have human boundaries. My pet, though, come here.
Yeah.
And that's what, what he's talking about, though, that's an American thing. Mm-hmm. That definitely is the United States of America thing compared to a lot of the world, how the pets are. That's a big deal here. So, yeah, what we're bringing about is this isn't. It's taking the time, and what I want to correlate into, it's Giannis Antetokounmpo's, the Bucks forward center, one of the Greek freak, as they call him. Why would I be talking about him? Well, I love the video about when in 2023, when they did not win the championship, someone asked him about the failure, and what this is about is he said, the reporter goes, I'm curious for you. Do you view this season as a failure? And Giannis says, Do you get the promotion every year on the job? No, right? So every year your work is a failure? Yes or no? No. Every year you work towards something. You work towards something. And that's what I want to, with finding time right now. I don't want the veterinarians, they see a slow calendar all of a sudden, they're like, what am I doing wrong? Right? It starts internalizing, what am I doing wrong? You got to have a growth mindset. And a growth mindset is, we've said it before, when the business is rolling through the doors, your mindset is just to take care of business, what is coming through the doors. You're not thinking backwards or forwards, right? You're not reflecting, and you're not being forward thinking. Now's the time. Why we bring up time today is because you probably have the time to be forward thinking. We're coming up on a new year. I know people give New Year's resolutions a hard time, and the reason they do is because they fail at them. Actually, they fail to implement them, right? It's not failure in the way Giannis is saying. They fail to even take action on those things. Now's the time to build in what is that going to be to get your mindset right. Because at the end of the day, we can talk about this. You know this. Our biggest challenge with our clients is mindset, right? Our biggest challenge is when we talk about prices, we talk about calling, we talk about these things, they're just resistant, right? So how do you get someone excited and motivated into the right frame of mind? How did you get your client there to make those calls?
I think they're just proactive people.
They're proactive
anyway.
people, so in the right mindset already.
Yeah, I mean, and they're slightly slow. They're not as slow as some.
Right.
But they're the one that is always looking to make a positive change.
Right.
And if they can make it, they're going to do it.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, great. It didn't work. We tried it.
Right.
It doesn't work.
And we're dealing with scientists here, right? Doctors, scientists are looking at empirical evidence to show me that works. And so when we're able to say we have evidence that it works, that helps that mindset shift to go, okay, I can believe in that and get behind that. It works. From price changes to finding time. It's amazing when you take some time how much more you'll grow in the future. And so, I mean, I can't encourage enough for people to find time to do that, to find that growth mindset. And the growth mindset's not just about, it shouldn't be just about business growth. That's not what that means. Literally, your mindset growing to be in a spot where you can, as we talk about the Maslow's hierarchy, you can get yourself in a spot to have vision, to be thinking, to be open to what's possible, to think about your business on the empirical evidence side is different than the empirical evidence on, a medical condition potentially that you have medical evidence behind to back up. So here's what we do for that, right? So when they're thinking that, that's what we have to. That's why we do this podcast. I think that's one of the biggest things about inspiring is part of it. We want to inspire these private practice owners about doing these things that we know works because we have evidence from our clients to see that work. So, pick up the phone. I like that, Kale. That's great. Pick up the phone. You have time. And even if it's like, it gets back to when we say make time, though. Say someone's listening and going, I don't have the time. Oh,
Block it off. You do.
You do.
You have no choice.
Yes. Yeah, you might have to spend an extra few hours up front, right? You might have to take if you're 60 hours a week working, you might have to go, I got to work 4 more hours this week because I'm not going to get to where I need to go doing what I'm doing. What's that definition of insanity?
Trying the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
That's right. We got to change it up.
We do. And I am an advocate for coming up with a financial incentive for the staff to fill your book.
Yeah.
Invest in that and math that out. Sit down. Take several hours.
Yeah.
This slow time's a great time to do it, and make the slow time not slow. Everybody says this is a slow month.
Yeah.
Why?
Yep.
Is it slow because you've accepted that month is slow?
Just waiting for people to walk through the door.
You're waiting for people to walk through the door, and that's not the way it's going to be anymore. That's not how it's going to be anymore.
No, it's not. So it's back to basics. That COVID stimulus is over. It's over. So we're back to basics. We're back to new ways to work on old things, if you will. So I think that's a great message today. Take time to find the time and build that in for the future. Don't stop doing that. You always need to have that. That time might shift to what you're doing during that time, but keep that time available. Any closing words today? Words of wisdom? Anybody?
I think I got my point across.
You got your point across? Yeah, you got.
I feel better about yelling about people's financial responsibility.
Yeah, and it's a fine line because of mental health and all kinds of things too, right? So it's like
it is.
It is,
But you can't, as the veterinarian, internalize someone else's financial situation.
Nope.
It's not your fault.
Empathy versus compassion that we talked about recently. That's a big deal to understand the difference between those two. So that'll help you with communicating to your clients. And again, you're the experts. You know what's best for the dog, for the future, or cat, whatever animal you're working on, right? You know what's best for their future. Promote that. Promote responsible pet ownership. And we sure appreciate everyone listening today. Please like and subscribe to the Vetted Podcast. We're continuing to grow, and we'll continue to educate, inspire, and advocate for the private practice owner. Thanks so much, everybody.
Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings.